Hi, everybody. Happy holidays. And if you're celebrating Christmas today, Merry Christmas. I decided that I was going to replay my very first episode, which was with Joe LaMarca Mathisen, former executive producer of the Today Show, who has gone on to do incredible things. We talked about it a little bit in the interview. She's now the co-executive producer of the M Factor film, Shredding the Silence on Menopause. And I actually was able to interview her on the Living Ageless and Bold television segment on WDBJ7. So I'm going to start with that. It's actually a 9-minute interview. It's so good, talking all about what the documentary is and the movement that they're doing with menopause. And then I'm going to replay her episode. It's one of the most popular ones. You're going to love hearing her share story and just her career and how she grew to NBC and the Today Show. It really is awesome. So I wish all of you a happy holiday season, and thank you for being a loyal listener. Welcome to the Living Ageless and Bold podcast. Each episode, I bring you amazing women who inspire, educate, and share their experiences and journeys along the way. So grab a glass of wine or a cup of coffee, find a cozy spot, and let's relax and have some fun hearing what can be accomplished after 55.
New documentary focuses on the health crisis faced by millions of women going through menopause. It's called The M Factor, and it's sparking important conversations about menopause, not only here in the U.S., but around the world. Joining me now with more are Christina Dave. She's the podcast host and lifestyle expert. Welcome. Great to have you back.
So good to be here.
Yes, and we're so excited because we're also joined by Joe LaMarca Mathisen. She is the co-executive producer, I should say, of the M Factor film. Welcome, Joe. We're so glad that you could join us today.
Thank you. So glad to be here.
Yes. All right. So, Christina, let's talk a little bit about your connection with Joe. The two of you met several years ago, right?
Yeah. So Joe was the executive producer of the fourth hour of the Today Show and actually connected me with Hoda Kotb. So I interviewed her for Virginia Tech. And I knew when I launched the podcast, I wanted her to be my very first guest.
Okay.
So we started then, and she was just the M Factor film. I don't even think it was named yet, Joe. We could talk about that. But I knew now, doing this with you, that I wanted her to be our first guest here, because this topic is so important.
It's so important, and it's now exploding. But Joe, take me back, because, we were talking, several years ago, people were not talking about menopause, wouldn't discuss it. And you said you were having maybe difficulties finding funding for this film, right?
I was having difficulties finding help for myself. and so that's kind of what sparked this. Tamsin Fidel and I, Tamsin is one of our producers as well. And she and I were both in the process. We were going through menopause or perimenopause. We didn't know what was wrong with us. And a mutual friend introduced us, and we realized that if we didn't know what was going on with us, that we couldn't be alone, and there were probably many, many women who didn't know what was going on with them and their minds and their bodies. And so we decided, let's do something. We both worked in television, and we knew how to tell a story. So we said, let's tell the story of menopause. And we started shooting it with our phones, and we thought we would just slap it up on social media, and, hopefully that we tell 10 friends and they tell 10 friends, and it would just grow. But it did grow bigger than that.
I was just going to say, it grew a lot bigger than that. And, just within the last year, I've noticed, and maybe it's because I'm paying attention because I'm going through it too, a lot of us are going, what is happening? There's so many different signs and symptoms of menopause, and you really do feel like you're going crazy. And so I'm glad that you're doing this and tackling this issue. But within the last year, it feels like there's more conversations. We're seeing A-list actresses come, before Congress even, and talking about it and really, advocating for women's health and studies into menopause. So what do you hope comes from this documentary?
Well, awareness, number one. And you're right. It helps that so many celebrities are stepping up and talking about it, because I think as women, we associate menopause with getting old and drying up and being useless, right? And that's how it's been portrayed in the media for the longest time. But when you see these stunning, beautiful, smart women talk about it, it makes it almost trendy that it's okay to talk about menopause now. It's not, in fact, it's better than okay. It's on trend to talk about menopause. But, when we started this 3 years ago, there weren't a lot of people talking about it. Over the 3 years, more telemed platforms started to surface, like MIDI and Alloy, and then medications started popping up, like Veoza, and there was that Super Bowl commercial that a couple of years ago, and that brought menopause to the forefront. So we're hoping that the more we talk about it and the more women talk about it, the better off we all will be, so that we know what doctors to see, and we know what questions to ask, and we know what our options are. And most of all, that we know it's not just us. We're not going crazy. It's what's happening to our bodies. And it's just like when we go through puberty or when we're pregnant.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that was a big takeaway when I watched, part of it, and I going to finish it. But there was an interview where this woman said, we celebrate going through puberty, we celebrate pregnancy with, gender reveal parties, and we have big parties and we talk about, babies. But when it comes to menopause, it's silence. Nobody talks about it. So I love that this is a conversation that we're having. Take me into this documentary, Joe. Tell me a little bit about what people can expect. There's a lot of interviews with a lot of women who are going through it, but also some interviews with the experts and what they're saying now, right?
Well, I think, a big thing is women are afraid of hormone therapy. And that is the result of the WHI study that came out in 2002, saying that hormone therapy caused breast cancer and strokes. And that study was later debunked 15 years later, but it made headlines when that study was pulled in 2002. And when it was debunked, it was in a whisper. And so women remained fearful of taking hormones. I think there was something like 18 million women on hormones in 2002. And when that study came out, 16 million flushed those hormones down the toilet. So these doctors talk a little bit about the study. They pull it apart. They look at the data differently. The data was also looked at in the spring. It was reevaluated. And so they clear up some of the confusion around hormone therapy and who can take it, who can't, and what it is actually. So we hope that women don't fear hormone therapy, and that they feel open enough to talk to their doctors about it. I mean, we interviewed one woman. She's not in the film, but we interviewed her, and she said, "Oh, I won't tell anyone I'm on hormone therapy because I don't want to be judged." And I thought that was really telling of where we are. So, we're hoping that this film just gives women the knowledge and the education that they need to feel better and to get better.
I love that. Yeah. And how can people help move the needle when it comes to this conversation, with this film?
Well, some of the things that we hope to do is to create workplace policy. And I think when I was the EP of the fourth hour of today, I was going through menopause. I couldn't remember things. I was having hot flashes. I had total insomnia, and it's hard to work on a morning show when you're not sleeping at all at night. and then you have to get up. You don't even have to get up. You just go. And so I couldn't give the show what it needed. And a lot of women drop out of work in their 50s because they can't function through their menopause symptoms. So we're hoping that women will speak up, and that they will create that conversation in their workplaces, or they'll at least let us help them. And we're hoping that, that legislation changes around menopause. We held the first Senate briefing. We were invited by Patty Murray, Senator Patty Murray of Washington State, earlier this, we're in December, so it was in November. It was the first time that menopause was discussed on Capitol Hill, the first time. And so we want to change that. We want to make it acceptable, more than acceptable. We want to make it, a world in which this is just another stage, but we have so much more to give, and we're not ready to give up. So you can move the needle by writing to your local representatives, by creating workplace policy, and those are the places that we really have to start.
I love it. Yeah.
I was going to say quickly, let's talk about just real quick, how many women, we were just talking about this before we went on the air, how many women are going through menopause right now?
It's 6,000 women a day in the U.S., but by
Wow.
2025, which is just around the corner, 1.1 billion women, over 1.1 billion women will be in menopause. And that's
Wow.
not just, we've learned that menopause is one day, right? It's the 1 year anniversary of your last menstrual cycle. And so you're in perimenopause for a very long time. And then you're menopause for a day, and then you're postmenopausal. But as we learn in the film, menopause never ends.
It doesn't end, right? Exactly. And we've got to get some help for these ladies, for these millions of ladies. Jo, thank you again for your time and for all the work that you put into this film. It's called The M Factor, and you can find it on PBS. We certainly appreciate it.
Thanks, Jo.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Welcome to the Living Ageless and Bold podcast for successful women over 55. I'm your host, Christina Daves, and in every episode, I bring really amazing women who've done some pretty cool things and have some great stories to share and some great information to share with us. And today is really special. This is our inaugural episode, number 1, with my friend, Joanne LaMarca Mathisen. Welcome, welcome. And we're going to toast this. I sent her a little bottle of champagne. So if you're on video, you can watch us do this and try not to make a mess. And if you're on audio, you'll hear the pops in a minute. I could do. You go first. Oh, I got it. It's kind of a screw top. It's not that scary.
Oh, that's good. Oh, you know what? You are much stronger than I am.
So,
Okay, there it goes. Oh, you're right. It is a screw top.
it's just a screw top. That's really funny. So,
I'm going to pour mine. So at least you can hear the pour.
That's awesome. So
You can hear
cheers,
the pop.
Joe.
Cheers to
Thank
you.
you
This
so
is
much.
wonderful. And there's nothing like reinventing yourself on the back nine. So I'm all in.
And I have to tell you all, I had a conversation with Jo. I had these ideas, and she really was helped me formulate this. She's like, Christina, go out there, be a spokesperson for women over 55. Nobody's listening to us. No one's talking to us. And I'm having so much fun lining up these guests and meeting amazing people, talking to amazing people. So thank you for everything. Thank you for starting this with me.
Oh, gosh. It's all you. But thank you for doing things for mature women or immature mature women.
Right, exactly. I think I told you, I read somewhere that they say we're like teenagers with money. But so who is our guest? Who is Jo LaMarca Mathisen? Jo has an incredible story, and we're going to go back to the beginning, but she spent over 25 years in media. She was the back end of the 4th hour of the Today Show. She was executive producer. We're going to talk where she started and how she got to where she was before she left there, and then why she left and what she's doing now. So it's all progression, and it's okay to do all the things that we're doing now, but you had the super cool job when you left college to be a page at NBC. That's a dream job. Tell us about that.
That was a dream job. That was really a dream job. I mean, I seriously, I really would pinch myself, like physically pinch myself when I was doing it. It was, so if you don't know what the page program is, well, I don't know what it is now because it's changed and it keeps going through changes, but it was an 18-month program to get your foot in the door at NBC. And while you were there, I called it grad school without the work because you get paid like nothing. You do get paid. You have to have a college degree. But you get to, if you're unsure of what you want to do in television, but you know you want to work in television, it enables you to talk to anyone, to apply for assignments throughout the company and learn what different facets of the company does. So I worked in local news, I worked in ad sales, I worked in communications and publicity, I worked in marketing, and I worked on the Today Show. And I can't even, while you're doing it, your seating audiences at all their live shows. So back in the day, a long day ago, I set audiences for Letterman and Saturday Night Live, and it was some of the most wonderful experiences. I mean, I remember walking into the Letterman studio, and David Sanborn. Do you know David Sanborn?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Okay, good. David Sanborn was playing a song called "The Dream." And I had never heard of him. I'm sitting there in my page uniform waiting for the audiences to line up outside the studio so I could bring them in. And he's sitting in there playing, and I'm sitting in there by myself. And I thought, this is a moment, just to listen, to have a private concert like this.
Right.
And stupid, ignorant, young, but blissful, young May said to him, I was like, do you have that song on an album somewhere? Because back then we had albums too, back in the day.
Right, back in the day. And you didn't have a cell phone to record him while you were watching.
Or Shazam him.
Right,
So
right, exactly.
I had to embarrass myself and say, excuse me, but is that a song I should know? And do you have it on an album? And,
oh my gosh.
And I haven't stopped listening to it since. But so, yeah, so paging was a wonderful way to get your foot in the door, and it still is. And it's very, very competitive. I think right now they hire 2% of the applicants. So it's a tough one, but the experiences I had in paging may have been some of the best experiences I've had in television.
So did you get to sit in on SNL, like when you seated?
Yeah.
So and that had to have been like the good. Not that SNL isn't good now, but that's really when it. Like, who were the stars back then?
Oh God, I guess it was. Oh,
like
you're
Belushi?
asking. No, it was after Belushi, because Belushi was like with Gilda Radner, wasn't he?
Yes, yes.
And that was when I was a little. That was when I was little. Like I would watch SNL when I was, a teenager or a teenager, and think like, oh my God, those people are up in New York City so late at night. I was like, it's so weird. They're up in the middle of the night. And I didn't live far out of New York City, maybe 30 miles, 20 miles. And then all of a sudden I'm working the show, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I remember when I was little and I used to watch and think, these people are so crazy. They're up in the middle of the night. But we got to go to cast parties after the show, and, they do a dress rehearsal.
Right.
So they do a dress rehearsal earlier. And then they take the best scenes from the dress rehearsal and put them in the show for the live show. So we got to see all of it, and in between shows we would get a bag dinner, which was always a great tuna fish sandwich. And we'd all just sit together and eat our tuna fish sandwiches and then go back to the show. But I think I was during like the Dan Aykroyd days.
Yeah.
And oh my God, see, this is my menopausal 50-something mind. Dan Aykroyd. Who else was it back then? It was oh God,
Jane Curtin, or is that earlier?
No, that was earlier.
Okay.
Jane was with oh gosh, it'll come. I'll just start blurting names in the middle of our interview.
That's okay. It's all good. And it's so fun. We were on an NBC tour not that long ago, and the tour happened. They randomly take you by places, and it was the dress rehearsal. It was Alec Baldwin, and we got to see him rehearsing, which was so cool.
That is very cool. That is very cool.
So you're hanging out with stars when you're 21, doing that. And then you have to pick a job after your 18 months. So where did that take you?
Well, what happened was I was very, very lucky. And I had started the show in August of 87. And in November, I'd started a paging in August of 87. In November, the Today Show. So when you start, they ask you, where do you want to land, or where do you think you want to land, or what are you interested in? And I wrote the Today Show, and no, we didn't watch morning TV in my house. We didn't have a TV in our kitchen. We got out of bed, had breakfast, and rolled out the door. Right. And so we never watched morning television. But of course, I knew all the characters of them because they were so famous back then, and there were only Channel 2, 4, 5,
right?
7, 9.
You have 4 channels,
right?
And you had to get up and turn the channel like manually.
And so, So in November, the Today Show needed somebody to help file papers and run around the city and get visas. And so they asked me, they asked me if I wanted the assignment. I said yes. And I never went back to paging. Well, I would go back on the weekends. I would work SNL, and after the show, if there was anything at night, I would page at night. But so I really only did paging for August, September, and October, and then on weekends throughout like the next year. So I went pretty much straight to the Today Show, and then I was supposed to go on the Orient Express. Does that even exist anymore? I don't even know.
I don't know.
I was supposed to go on the Orient Express, and they gave me the option of having a full-time job and not being a page anymore, because then your time runs out. But if I took the full-time job, I wouldn't be able to go on the Orient Express. And it's one of sort of my little private secret regrets. But then I took the full-time job, and then I stayed for about 9 years. I left. I went to CBS, and then I went to the Wall Street Journal, and then I went to CNBC, and then something opened. Then they launched the 9 o'clock hour with Mrs. Brady with Florence Henderson.
Yes.
And Jodi Applegate and Asher Blake. And so I went back to launch the 9 o'clock hour, and then I stayed from 1999 till 2017, and then I left in 2017. Then I came back, and then back and forth and back and forth. But it's been a great career. Been a great career.
So you have kids, your two boys. Do they think? Because my kids do not think I am cool at all. Like if I'm on TV, whatever, doesn't mean anything to them. Do they think it's cool that you were like on the set of SNL since it's still around, or is it just like as mom's job back then?
And I said to my son for his 17th birthday, I said, "Do you want me to take you to see SNL? Because you have to be 16, right. I believe." And he's like, "Nah." And I said, "Nah, what is wrong with you? I mean, we watch it at home every Saturday." He's like, "I don't want to go in the city." I'm like, "It's 15 minutes away."
Oh my gosh.
Said, "No, I don't." Isn't that funny? So yeah.
So but you were there Today Show, the full progression. You said the 9 o'clock hour. And so how did that come to be? You know, why Florence Henderson? What did they think she could bring to the show? Like what made them think, oh, we need a lifestyle, you know, we're news and now we're going to start doing fun?
I think a lot of it was business, right? So buying a syndicated show to fill the 9 o'clock hour is very expensive. And they already had a studio. They already had a crew. And Florence was on the show, and she was a great guest. And our executive producer at the time thought she would be a great host. And so we launched, it was called Later Today back then. So we launched the 9 o'clock hour. And we launched in a different studio, and we launched, you know, obviously with different talent. And I think then they figured out, well, we could stay in the same studio and not have an entire studio dedicated to another show, and that would cost us less money because then we can use the same crew. And so then a year later, that show was absorbed into the Today Show, and I think that's when it was hosted by Al and Ann Curry at the beginning, and I think Hoda as well. I think it was Al, Ann Curry, and Hoda at the very beginning.
Okay.
Then before it became Hoda and Kathy Lee. So it went through a few rebirths, and now I think it's great. Now I think it's a great hour. It's a really little lifestyle, a little news. It's such a good mix of everything we need to get our day started.
Yeah, that might be a tagline.
And if it's not, it should be.
And thanks to you, you know, Hoda and I both went to Virginia Tech, and I was trying to put together an event for women in business at Virginia Tech. And through Joe, we got it all together with Hoda's PR people, and I was able to interview her, which was awesome to see her rise. And it was before she became an anchor. She was still just doing her hour, you know, and doing the other stuff on the show. But one of the things she talked about, which was really fascinating, and you were there live with it, is when they started the Hoda and Kathy Lee, she was used to news and used to the earpiece in where people are feeding you stuff. And I guess you all did a segment outside, and Kathy Lee walked up and took her note cards and ripped them up and threw it out. And she's like, "We're just going to talk and have a conversation."
And that was Kathy Lee's, that was her secret recipe. I mean, when she did Regis and Kathy,
Yes.
they did not have script, and they did not have, often on these shows, the talent, the newscasters have an earpiece in, so the control room can say, 2 minutes, or ask this question, or did you know, and whisper in their ear and give them any direction. Kathy wanted none of that. She didn't want to be told what to do. She didn't want to be told what to say. She didn't care how much time she had left. If she didn't have time, we would just go to the commercial later. And that's what made her so brilliant. She just, everything was off the cuff. And here is a really good saying for you and for this podcast. But Kathy, after all of the years she did television, I would, we would talk to her. I would tell her something, or somebody would, well, you got to hit the commercial in 30 seconds. And she'd go, I don't give a rip. And her, we can't do that. I don't give a rip. And she didn't. And that's what made her golden. But she never had an earpiece in. So when she met Hoda, she was like, bye-bye earpiece.
Yes.
And it's sort of a little bit of a security blanket, right? Because you know that if you blank out, or there's somebody to help you to step in. She said, nope. And they never used him again. They never used it.
That's awesome.
So we, as their producer, I would stand on the set with them, and sometimes I just hold up note cards that would say, don't forget, ask this, or
oh my gosh,
must break for a commercial, or whatever it is. And so we sort of became, it was very old fashioned. We sort of became their human earpiece.
I love it. Well, I think SNL still does that. They still hold the cards up.
Yes, they still use, and that's, they hold. We had teleprompter for them, and SNL. I think they do because they move around so much, right? The actors move around so much, and you can often see them looking at the cards, because they're not looking at the person they talk to, and you can't really. Prompter's small, so prompter sits in your camera, and this, and has a mirror, but it's tiny. So if you're far from that camera, you need to have that cue card. So yeah, SNL has cue cards, and it's sometimes I'm like, you can do better than that. Look at the person you're talking to, then glance over at the
right, or just get some buzzwords. I struggle because I wear contacts to see far, and like now I don't have my contacts in because you're close, so I can see you. But if I go in studio, there's a teleprompter, I've got to debate, okay, is it going to be a far teleprompter or a close teleprompter? Because if it's too close and my contacts are in, I would need my reading glasses, and then I can't read it.
What happened to us? All of a sudden, I have a bowl full of reading glasses from 1.0 to 2.75. And now, for everything activity I do, I have to wear a different setting. So if I'm walking, I wear if I'm walking, I don't have to wear anything. If I'm driving, I wear a 1.0. If I'm driving at night, I'll wear 1.5. If I'm reading, it's a 2.5.
So here's the best thing about all of this show, all these things when we're talking about way back when and how we did it, our audience is all resonating with this. They're like, oh yeah, I remember.
When did I start wearing I remember I cried when my dad got glasses, and now, I can't go anywhere without them.
I remember people telling me, oh, just wait. So I keep telling my daughter, I'm like, you wait, you tease me about things. You wait. I can't wait to see this when it happens to you.
So true.
Okay, back to the Today Show, because how cool, 20 plus years. Tell us some of your favorite stories, your favorite guests, like just the real memory makers.
Let me have a little sippy sip first.
Okay, cheers. I will too.
So, okay, I'm a Cher fan, and I'm sure a lot of people listening are Cher fans because it's their generation, right? In fact, can you see her behind me?
Yes, I do see her. So yeah, people on video, there's Cher back there in her full hair.
Yes. And if you were in my office, you would see a lot of Cher paraphernalia. And so I've been a Cher fan since I'm 6 years old. I was the secretary of the International Cher Fan Club for a while. And when I was in sixth grade, my parents took me to see my first Sonny and Cher concert at Westbury Music Fair on Long Island. And And I'd never met her. And one day I'm working on the Today Show, but I'm still paging. And Cher was scheduled to be on Letterman. And the pages all knew that I loved Cher because everybody knew. And so they asked me if I wanted to work the door. And could you imagine? So that night,
I can imagine now meeting Cher, let alone at being 20. I can't.
I mean, yeah, this is why you have to put stuff into the universe.
Right.
My whole entire, I made her hair combs for her hair, and I made Sunny a keychain when I went to see their concert. And I went to the security guard and I was like, "Can I bring this to Sunny and Cher, please?" And very, vulnerable 12-year-old, and he was like, "No, honey, you can't, but I can take that for them." And I always wondered if she ever got my hair combs and he ever got my keychain, and hoped that one day I would meet them. So on this day, I'm standing at Letterman's door, and there walks Cher, and this had to be in 1988. And so she walks in, and all I could do is just stare at her. And she must have been in her 40s, I guess, right? Because this is like 30 years ago, and she's in her 70s now.
70s,
so she's in her 40s. And all I remember is how tight her face was.
Yeah.
And not scary tight, but just tight. And I thought, oh my God. And she had a nose job, and I think she had her teeth fixed. And I really liked when her teeth were like not fixed. And I have a bad nose, and so I liked her nose. And I think that's why I liked her so much, because she was pretty and had a bad nose. And I was like, I could be pretty one day with my bad nose. And so anyway, I met her, and I brought a little cassette tape with me. I actually have it framed over here. I'm going to go get it. So I brought a little cassette tape with me to get her to sign my cassette tape. And she comes over. I said, would you mind? And she was like, "No, of course. What's your name?" And I'm like, "It's Joanne." And she's like, "With an E?" I'm like, "No, yes, J. No, how do I spell my name?" In my head, I'm like, J-O-E. No, it's not J-O-E. It's J. And I was like, "I don't care what you write. I'm so happy you're signing my thing." And People Magazine was snapping a photo, and she was very nice, very gracious, and she walked away. And about a couple of days later, I get a phone call from, and by the way, the golden rule is when you're a page, you do not ask for autographs. But this was a life's dream.
Right.
And if it meant losing my job, I was all in.
You met Cher. You don't care.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
And so anyway, so they took my picture, and they called me, and they said, "Do you mind if we put it in the magazine?" And that's when I was like, oh God, lose my job or have all my friends from high school know that I finally got to meet Cher.
I hope you did it.
So I went for the photo. But she couldn't have been nicer. And then a few years ago, when Kathy was hosting the show, Cher came on with us, and I had developed this spin the bottle game, which was this just wooden game, and so we would play spin the bottle with our guests. And when it came time after the commercial break to play spin the bottle with Cher, they called me in, and I had a boyfriend who once bought me a sweater that once belonged to Cher from some store in LA.
Right.
And I wore the sweater just because. And so I wore the sweater, and she looked at the sweater, and she was like, "That was my sweater," which was so amazing to me. But she could not have been kinder, nicer, easier to work with. I mean, there are a lot of difficult people I've come across in my career, and she was just one of and it made me so happy to know that she was one of the sweetest people. But, you get to meet, I don't know if you watch The Americans, but I got to meet Matthew Rhys, and he plays the lead role in The Americans. And he was a bad guy. He was a spy. He was a Russian spy posing as an American. So I had him like choke me in a picture. And I mean, the celebrities are, most of them, 90% of them were amazing to deal with and so wonderful. But there was a 10% that made you want to quit your job.
But that's people in life.
Yes.
Most people are nice. I did event planning in my 20s. I actually booked the Dave Matthews Band 2 weeks before they were on the radio. That's my big claim to fame. But when you're booking these people and you're there with them in their bus or whatever, you're giving them, they're just normal people. I remember one guy had just broken up with his girlfriend and I'm the only girl around. And he's like, oh my God, what should I do? And she's so mad at me. Well, and I was like, that's when I realized they're just people. They just work in movies or TV for a living. And, you know, I was doing event planning at the time.
Yes. And sometimes people are just having a bad day and you have to give them that. But
or sometimes people are just jerks.
Yeah, sometimes they're just jerks. Sometimes they're just jerks. But yeah, it's been fun. I remember Dave Matthews came. I guess they were doing SNL. And, you know, when you do SNL, you're a relatively new band that a lot of people haven't heard of. And so I sent one of our interns to go do the interview. I think 2 years later, I was like, what are you, a moron? You could have sat there with Dave Matthews and those guys. And
Joe, I took their rider and I said, you're not getting this. You're not getting this. Who do you think you are? So we all have those career mistakes.
We do. But, you know, the moral, I think, you know, so I was a fashion major in college, and my whole life I thought I was going to be a fashion major, designer, something, or fashion buyer, illustrator. And my last year of college, I took a class in television, fell in love with it, never looked at the clock. And so I think the moral of my story, and probably so many other people too, I think about how many people really work in what they studied in college, and how you really have to follow what you love doing. And you know, there's that saying, if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life.
So true.
Right. And so I think, you know, when I guide my son, who is now 17 and looking at colleges and wants to study sports marketing, and I think, yeah, that's all wonderful and important because you love doing it. And hopefully you'll always love doing it.
Right.
But, you know, I went to a school that had a program with FIT, and that was my plan, and it changed. And so, you know, it taught me not to put pressure on my child or my children, and to just let them be. But I think it's so important that you love what you do. And it's like you, Christina, you are so good at this, and you didn't do this at 20. You did this. You did this when you know it meant something to you, because you can now, and you prove yourself when you're young. You do what you do what you love, and but as you get older, you realize what's more important and to you, and what your purpose is. And your purpose, even with event planning, right, is to fill people's lives with some information or some. And that's what you're doing now with all the podcasts you have lined up. And I think that's what's so important about the second part of your life, is that I have a friend who came to me. She's volunteered in the schools forever, and now her last child is graduating, and she said, I want to do something with purpose, and I want to run a nonprofit, and I want to run a nonprofit maybe that has kids involved somehow. And so she's interviewing now, running, you know, working for doing director development work. And so she, you know, this part of our lives is about finding our purpose, right? And really doing what matters. Because at the end of the ride, we don't come back and go, "Cool, I should have done, you know, do my 20s over. I don't like that one.
Yeah.
I like what I did there." So I think what you're doing is so important, and talking to all of these women who found a calling after their young years, and now in their prime years, when
I love
you
that,
look
our
at life a
prime
little
years.
differently. Yeah, I mean,
And share what you're doing now. And people are thinking, why would you leave the Today Show? That's got to be the greatest gig going. But you have bigger purpose too.
yeah, I mean, I left for a few reasons. One, because I felt like, okay, I've been doing this for 30 years of my life, and it's time to open a new door and have a new experience. But so that was one. I wanted to be with my family. I knew my son only had a couple of years left at home, and I wanted to be with him more. And I was going through menopause, and I didn't know it. And I had all these symptoms that I didn't know were symptoms of menopause, including insomnia, which kept me up all night. And then I'd have to get up and I would get hot flashes. So I figured, like, oh, I'm in it. I guess I'm in it. But and I would, you know, I remember saying to my staff when I came back for the last time in 2019, I was like, listen, I think I'm going through menopause. So if I ask you something 92 times, it's not because I'm trying to
Give
be
me
a
a
pain.
break.
It's just because I have brain
remember.
fog. And so when I left and realized that all these years I've been dealing with different symptoms that would come and go, joint pain that lasted a few months and then mysteriously disappeared, and hives that would appear in a rash after a run, and then all of a sudden months later it stopped coming, and anxiety, and it was getting harder to wake up in the morning when you don't go to bed until 5 o'clock and you have to get up at 6. And so anyway, so I started working on this documentary with a friend of mine who was not a friend until we met through our struggle to survive
To survive
the prime
menopause.
years. Yeah, our struggle to survive through the prime years. There's something not right about that, but anyway, and there's a wonderful scene in Fleabag where Kristen Scott Thomas, and if you're going through menopause, please look up the Kristen Scott Thomas menopause scene in Fleabag, because she talks about how awful it is, but then she talks about how at the end it is magnificent, because like Kathy Lee, you don't give a rip. But anyway, so I started working on this documentary, and because I was so lost, and the woman that I'm doing it with was so lost, and between the two of us, we were like, we can't let the women who come after us be as lost as we are. It's not right. And so we started doing this. We've talked to some fabulous people. We've talked with Sharon Malone, who is Michelle Obama's doctor, gynecologist. We've talked with Audra McDonald, the actress who posts very rawly about menopause. And we've talked to Dr. David Rosensweet, who believes in compounded HRT and why, and organic. And I mean, it's amazing what I've learned. It's really amazing. And I'm sure when you talk about Alzheimer's and dementia, a lot of our, I forget how many women, I forget what the ratio is, but more women have Alzheimer's and dementia than men. And it is because our doctors say, because we lose estrogen faster. So, men go through it too, but they go through it. We everything drops the minute we stop getting our periods or the minute we get a hysterectomy. With men, it's just a slow burn till the end. But with us, it's like a boom.
So they always have it so much easier with everything. It's just not fair.
So anyway, so it's been such an education, and I love doing that. And I've been doing some leadership coaching, and I'm thinking about going back to school for human behavior. And
it's amazing.
But it's things that matter to me, right? I love doing the leadership coaching. I love talking people through their obstacles and helping them realize why they're not getting to where they want to go, and whether it's at work or at home or whatever. So, and it helps people. And that's my purpose now. I want to help people. I want to help women have a better quality life through menopause, and want to help people have realize their dreams and their goals, because when you put it out there, it happens, right? It happens.
Look what you did. You helped me with this, and
look at what you did. Look at what you're doing right now. It's incredible.
And I'm so happy. Like I cannot thank you enough. I'm so excited for your documentary to come out, and if anyone's watching and they like you, everyone's gonna love you and want to work with you, how do they reach out to you?
We have a web Facebook page called It's Not Me, It's Menopause.
Love it.
And or you can email us at myMenoStory@gmail.com.
Okay, and we'll put all that in the show notes so everybody will have it. So I have a couple questions that we ask everybody. What is your greatest accomplishment since you turned 50?
Oh my God, since I turned 50. I think my greatest accomplishment is living life on my terms.
Love that.
I think it really, turning 50 woke me up. Really woke me up.
I think you wake up at 50 and it's like, no, this is about me now. It's okay.
And you do realize, I mean, I do live my life like this is the back nine. And
I love when you said that. You sent me that. Yeah. And I might steal that. But that's
these
good.
These are the years, right? You want people in your life who fill your cup and whose cup you can fill, and you want everything to have a meaning. And so I just think these are some real important years, and to take care of yourself.
And we can make a difference. Okay. And then where do you see yourself in 10 years?
Oh, I see myself traveling all over the world and living in different places for a month at a time, and becoming like dedicating my life to leadership coaching and counseling people in 10 years. For
And
sure.
you're so good at that. So Joe LaMarca Mathisen, thank you for episode 1.
Cheers to
Cheers
you,
to
and
you.
congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank all of you all who are listening or watching to our first episode of Living Ageless and Bold. If you haven't subscribed yet, this is the first one. Hit the subscribe. Feel free to leave a review. Joe is amazing. And you can head over to our website, livingagelessandbold.com, where we'll give you inspiration, education. We'll have special offers and experiences for women just like us over 55. So thanks for joining us, and remember to never stop living ageless and bold. Thank you for listening or for watching this episode of Living Ageless and Bold. If you haven't already, please make sure you hit subscribe. And if you like the episode, I hope that you will give us a great review. You can also head over to livingagelessandbold.com and sign up for information, inspiration, and exclusive opportunities for us, women over 55. Thanks for listening. And remember, no matter what you do, keep living ageless and bold.